Welcome to NBC10 at Issue. I'm Keith Jones. We expect to receive mail 6 days a week, but some people in our area have noticed a slowdown. Life-saving medications aren't arriving, and bills that we send out, they're arriving late. NBC10's Lauren Make tried to learn why.
The delay is now something some residents are coming to expect.
If I'm sending out something, it's 5 to 7 days. If I'm receiving something, it's 3 to 4 days late.
It's been a couple of days I haven't received any mail, and then sometimes the mail comes Sunday morning about 7 o'clock in the morning. When I might not get it Friday or Saturday, and it comes Sunday. So it's been constant for a while now.
Coronavirus has been a factor here in Philadelphia, with workers testing positive, quarantines, and workers also able to use leave for COVID-19 related issues. The delays in Philly are coming as the Postal Service could play a bigger role than ever in the presidential election, with states like Pennsylvania allowing more vote by mail and the president pushing back against it. The head of the Postal Workers Union here in Philadelphia says overtime has been cut and some sorting machines have been removed. He says that he thinks that some moves by the Postmaster General appointed by the president are part of an effort to make ballots late or to show the Postal Service can't handle vote by mail. A spokesman for the Postal Service says they're focusing on efficiency so they can continue to offer high-quality service in a financially sustainable way. He also told NBC10, quote, "We are flexing our available resources to match the workload created by the impacts of the ongoing coronavirus pandemic and some other staffing issues. We appreciate the patience of our customers and the efforts of employees as conditions change on a day-to-day basis." I'm Lauren Make, NBC10 News.
And joining me now virtually is local economist, Professor Michael Busler. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
In your opinion, what has caused such big losses in the post office?
So first of all, let me say the postal workers, I think, are hardworking people, and I think they do a good job. The ones I've talked to all seem to care what they're doing and like to do the best job that they can. The problem is the system that they're working under. So first of all, how bad are the losses? Well, since 2008, they've lost nearly $80 billion. Last year alone, it was over $8 billion. So these losses are huge. Another issue that they have financially is in 2006, President Bush passed a requirement that whatever pension funds the postal workers are entitled to, they have to be funded every year. So you don't run into a situation where you have unfunded liabilities. Even with that, they're probably $160 billion short of covering all of their pension liabilities. So financially, they're in a very difficult position. They said to me, well, why is that? Well, it's probably for a couple of reasons. Number one, the post office is set up as a monopoly and it doesn't have to make profit. So people would say, well, that's a good thing. Instead of having a bunch of companies delivering the mail, we only have one, the post office. And if they're not going to make profit, you should be able to keep prices down, and they should be able to at least break even. The reality is that when you set up a monopoly, two things happen that cause costs to go up. Number one, you have no competition. As a result, there's no incentive to reduce the cost and try to pick up market share because you already have the entire market. Secondly, if you're running a nonprofit, that means that the entity is not motivated by profit. As a result, there's no incentive to reduce costs. In a business motivated by profit, you want to try to keep your costs as low as possible to maximize your profit. So with the post office being a nonprofit, it will actually drive costs up. And that's really what the basis of their losses would be.
How do you counter those who say this is political and that no real attempts have been made to actually aid the Postal Service?
So in the last stimulus package, there was $10 billion given to the Postal Service to try to make improvements. Even with that, the Postal Service claims now that they need another $25 billion more. This is not really political. We have a president who cares and who puts American taxpayers first. And before you're going to spend any more of American taxpayers' money, this administration wants to make sure that it's spent properly.
So in the scenario where the post office fails, what happens?
Well, I don't know that they'll let them fail. What they may consider doing is allowing some competition. And that's going to be a tricky thing to do, and I understand that. But take a look at what happened in package delivery. It used to be just the post office was the only one delivering packages. And again, with all due respect to them, it was very costly and relatively inefficient. Overnight packages didn't seem to always get there overnight. Well, then they allowed competition. FedEx came in, UPS came in. How did the post office respond to that? They now deliver 7 days a week. They brought their rates down and they become much more efficient. So adding some competition to letter carrying, and it's going to be a complicated thing to figure out, that would probably force the post office to operate more efficiently. Look, there's some long-term problems too. I mean, people don't mail letters anymore. Most of the communication is by email. Used to be, when you needed legal documents signed, you have the post office or some overnight package service get them over there. But now they have this DocuSign, which is even legal signing. So the demand for post office services will continue to go down, and as that happens, their revenue will continue to go down. It's averaged about roughly a 3% decrease every year for the last 10 or 12 years, because we're fundamentally changing the way we do things. So as technology gets into this, they're going to have to modernize too in order to stay in business, and they pretty much have to. They may have to make some changes. Maybe they don't deliver mail to everybody 6 days a week. Maybe we go to 5 days. Maybe the very rural areas, maybe they only get mail 3 or 4 days a week. So some changes that have to be more cost effective. And again, they're not motivated by profit, so they then generally consider cost effectiveness. But in order to stay in business in this competitive market, they're going to have to work on looking at what is cost effective and what isn't, and how can we make the whole operation more efficient.
Local economist, Professor Michael Busler. Thank you for your time.
My pleasure.
We reached out to the Philadelphia American Postal Workers Union. They believe the changes are political decisions.
Joining me now virtually is Nick Caselli. Nick is the president of American Postal Workers Union Philadelphia Local 89. Nick, thanks so much for joining us.
Good afternoon.
How serious is the problem right now with mail delivery?
It's become quite a serious issue. We've had serious mail delays since the pandemic started. The packaging in Philadelphia alone has risen from 10, 20, 30,000 pieces of parcels a day to over 100,000 a day. The pandemic has caused some of our co-workers in the postal system to be quarantined for 14 days. We have people retiring because of all the delays and the overwork, understaffed that we are experiencing during this time. The post office generally, as always, before this pandemic started, has run its operation on its own revenue, not a penny from the taxpayers, not a penny of tax dollars. We are now experiencing, due to the pandemic, our business and our mail has decreased to a very low level. Just like any other business in this country, we are suffering because most of our businesses in the country are closed or working at a minimum staff. We have asked, and we have had passed in the House of Representatives a bill to support the Postal Service Emergency Assistance Act for $25 billion. It now sits in the Senate. The bill is 4174, and the Senate still sits on this bill today and has not passed the needed financial emergency that we need.
So would you contribute or attribute all of the woes of the Postal Service slowdown to basically the coronavirus? Would you agree with that, or do you think there are other factors too?
Well, the latest factor, we've had a new Postmaster General appointed, Mr. DeJoy, to say the least. Since he's only been in for about a month and a half. We have seen reduced hours in retail units, including Saturday closings, delaying mail, slowing down the service, and further removal of our mail processing machinery. Philadelphia is one of the largest processing centers in the country. And in the last 3.5 weeks, we've had 5 machines removed from the building, not to other buildings, but just for scrap and spare parts.
What do you say to some people who might argue that the post office costs Americans too much money, losing billions of dollars a year, and that workers' salaries are too high? How do you counter those kinds of claims?
Well, the one thing that the post office has been claiming since George Bush, the president of the United States, put in place that the United States Postal Service has to pre-fund our retirement and health plan 75 years in advance. No company in this country or in this world has ever had to pre-fund their retirement or health plan 75 years in advance. That's a $5 billion price tag every year. And that's what hurts the post office, and that's why we're running in a negative financial situation.
Do you think that the Postal Service can handle mail-in voting? There's so much talk of that, obviously, leading up to the presidential election, as we are in a pandemic right now.
I absolutely believe we can. We've really experienced crisis throughout my 35 years in the Postal Service when UPS went on strike 10, 15 years ago. The post office came through, worked around the clock, and we delivered every package. This post office has the machinery and the manpower right now to handle vote by mail. But as I say, Postmaster General DeJoy, who is a strong supporter of President Trump, it seems like he's trying to take away the workforce that we have in place right now.
So you think it's partly due to the pandemic, but also political?
I think it's more political than the pandemic right at this time.
Are you confident that the Postal Service will survive?
If we get this $25 billion stimulus package, we most certainly will. Yes.
Nick
So
Caselli,
without
thank you
that,
so much.
we're going to fail. Thank you, Keith.